All right, 357 Magnum versus 45 ACP, and what I have today is Hornady Critical Duty. This particular 45 was provided by my Patreon Dan, so thank you for that. And to compare it to the 45 ACP, I picked up some 357 Magnum. So our Critical Duty 45 plus P is a 220 grain flex lock. It's kind of like a critical defense bullet, except as a higher antimony content in the lead. I believe it's a thicker jacket and also has a mechanical bond around that bullet. So it's designed to kind of go through hard barriers and still perform well. That's why the FBI uses this load for their handguns, because it can penetrate hard barriers, car doors, stuff like that, and still perform well. So our 357 is a 135 grain flex lock, and these two guns, a Glock 41 45 ACP and a Smith & Wesson 686 4-inch versus 5.3 inch, we have roughly the same amount of barrel travel in there. So I'm going to do my standard ballistic test with this, but I also have some other rounds here. Hydroshock 45 ACP and 357 mag. These are pretty much the old school standard. You know, they're not a bonded bullet, they're just a regular bullet here. And this 357 is actually provided by one of my supporters, Tim Beef, a couple years ago. He gives a lot of ammo to people on YouTube. Cool guy. But I'm going to use this to compare to this because this is, you know, the new style. We have our new style of law enforcement ammo that's bonded and it's meant to go through hard barriers versus, you know, old school law enforcement rounds. And this is pretty much standard ammunition. So we're going to go through the chronograph and see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time with that critical duty. And the reason why I mentioned that hydroshock, I'm not doing a complete ballistic test on it. I am doing a complete ballistic test on the critical duty. So we're going to go through 4 layers of denim followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics, which represents like our pectoral muscle. Then we're going to go through a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard, which represents like our ribs or sternum, and into more clear ballistics. I'm just going to do that shot today. I'm not going to pull this out and do our quote-unquote gut shot because I have a lot of other things I want to do. And the main thing I want to do here is I found this pan here, and it's a very heavy-duty pan. And this shot through that, I shot that with the hydroshock to make sure that this pan will not stop the bullets, but that is a very thick pan. And this is going to kind of represent like our car door. So after we do our regular ballistic test with the critical duty, what I want to do is I want to put this here and I want to do a shot with the critical duties, and we'll compare it to our hydroshock and see if, you know, the hard barrier penetration really is a thing where that critical duty will perform better than a standard round. And then, as always, I'm going to shoot from 25 yards just to kind of see what kind of practical accuracy I can get with these rounds at my full-size steel silhouette. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up we have our 45 ACP. I'm about 5 yards from the target, 4 yards from the chronograph. This is rated at 990 feet per second. So let's see how close we get to 990 feet per second. 1014, 1023, 1013, 1007, 1018. A little bit of malfunction there for some reason, but above rated velocity. So let's see how our 357 does. All right, 357 Magnum rated at 1275 feet per second. Let's see what we get with this. Pulled that too far to read that, so let's try again. 1304, 1311, 1278, 1324, 1291. So just like the 45, all of them are a little bit above rated velocity. So let's hit our ballistics gel block here and we'll see how these perform just in our standard test. All right, first up we have our 45 ACP on our standard ballistic test, our MDF. So let's see what this will do. Got a nosedive jam here. Lock infection. Let's see what we got. I like to show that, and that does indicate that we have some expansion right away. So what we're looking at here is our damage path is at about 17 inches, which would typically indicate about 19 inches without the MDF. So that's not too bad. It's definitely a high penetrating round. Let's see how our 357 does. All right, 357 Magnum. See what this will do. And again, it looks like where we impacted, starting to see some expansion already. All right, so what we're looking at here is we got about 14.5 inches total damage path, which would typically be about 16.5. Our damage through our gel looks a little bit higher. So I'm gonna say, looking at this, the 357 seems like it did a little bit better. It hit with more power, essentially, it seemed like anyways, and didn't penetrate as far. So let's put up our steel door simulation and we'll see how that does with the Hydroshock first, and then we'll see if that critical duty does better. All right, 45 ACP Hydroshock through our car door simulation. Trying to make a centered shot the best I can. All right, interesting. So we zipped right through this, no problem here. Everything looks intact. Here's our hole through our pan. And I'm kind of surprised with this because, you know, we kept our denim on here. So after going through what's essentially a hard piece of metal, we went through the denim, we went through the fiberboard, and we stopped here at about 16.25 or so, which would be, you know, like 18.25. That's actually not too bad, you know, even though we inhibited that expansion. It's kind of perfect. We'll see how our 357 does. All right, 357 Magnum Hydroshock. Let's see what this will do. All right, so that's an interesting result. It came down and it hit the bottom of this here and it exited out the block right here, entered the block right here. So where it actually came out of the block right here at the bottom, we're looking at about 22.75, and that bullet was resting here. It just fell. And here is our bullet. We have nose deformation, but surprisingly, you know, that pan did not rip that apart. For an old school Hydroshock, that's not too bad. So let's try our critical duty in both these calibers and see how they do. All right, 45 ACP critical duty. Let's see what this will do. All right, so that's interesting. I don't know what that is. It's a mark of some kind there. But we pretty much went to 20.75 inches. Bullet held together. For what I'm seeing here, it's not necessarily better than what the 45 Hydroshock did in some sense, but on the other sense, what we actually see is a lot more damage in that gel, probably just because it's higher powered, and then more penetration. And if we had a lot more metal than this, then that would definitely be an important thing. So I can't say that the Hydroshock or the critical duty did better or worse, but it seems like they both did okay. So let's see how our 357 Magnum does. All right, 357 Magnum critical duty. Let's see what this does. So what we're looking at there is different than the Hydroshock. We went in a much straighter line, which is actually a good thing. Actually, no, we came out the bottom. We tore up the bottom of this table here, and then it bounced back up. So let me hit it higher one more time, and we'll see how it does in another shot. All right, let's try that one more time to get a better shot here. All right, see, that's why I needed to do that again, because it did produce a little bit different result. And pretty much what we're looking at here is it came out to about the same penetration as that HydroShock did. I'll flip this over here. Our HydroShock came out right about here, and our critical duty actually went a little bit further. So that's a little bit different. But let's take a look at these paths of damage here. And interesting, I don't really see a whole lot going on there. It looks like it did the same thing. Yeah, it did the same thing. It ripped out the bottom, bounced off the table, and came back up. So looks like we're gonna have to hit it a third time. I don't know why it's doing this. All right, attempt 3. I'm gonna hit a lot higher. All right, so what we got there is it's right in the edge of where that 45 went through. And yeah, this reduced the penetration a little bit. But all 3 of those bullets from those 357s look a little bit different from one another. Or I mean, they look about the same is what I mean. They don't look a lot different from one another. So they're all consistent, they're all turned backwards. In fact, all the ones up here turn backwards. So yeah, looks like all the hard barrier ones caused the critical duties to tumble. It looks like it did the same thing with the HydroShock. So overall, what we're seeing is it's really hard for me to really say what I think here, but we definitely had more penetration on that 45 after going through the hard barrier than with the HydroShock, more with the critical duty. So I suppose that's a good thing, depending on what you're looking for. So let's shoot from a little bit of a distance and see how accurate these rounds can be. All right, so I actually decided to come back to 50 yards for a reason. These are full-size, duty-size guns. These are duty rounds. And 50 yards might look like a mile away in the woods, but 50 yards in the street is actually not very far at all. It would look like it's right in front of you. So, there might be a situation where an officer would have to shoot at that distance through a windshield or a door or something like that. So let's just see what kind of accuracy we can get, or I can get with these guns. So let's try a 45 here. I'll just shoot center mass. Hold it. I pulled those last couple shots. They were actually shooting really low for me. I had to aim like at the headshot area. So let's see how our 357 does. I'm not really sure where these are hitting. Case extraction is excellent. That's something you don't necessarily get in a lot of revolver rounds. So these nickel-plated cases really do keep the cases from expanding too significantly. So with a speed loader, which I didn't bring with me, you could definitely do a quick reload with these rounds. So I'll try a few more. I'm not exactly sure where these are hitting. They're hitting so fast I can't really tell. I think they're shooting kind of high. So unlike the 45, actually I had to aim at the very base of that target, right about here. And then the 45 I had to aim here. So a little bit different point of aim and impact. So overall, what I'm seeing with this ammo is it's not bad. You know, really what we want to look at is without the hard barrier penetration and see you know, how it performed, and it looked like it performed ideally. Now through our hard barrier there, you know, a little bit over penetration, but we also have to understand that you know, a pan is not necessarily as hard as a car door with all that mass material in there. So you probably do want to have more of what that critical duty did versus the Hydroshock. However, I was pretty surprised at that Hydroshock's performance, being old school, it's not bonded. So that's what you get today. Pretty interesting test here. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.